And here we go. All right, everybody. Stocks by the numbers. Welcome back. And I wanted to do a quick update here. Hold on. Let me close the window here. Bang. There we go. Quick update here on Supermicro Computer Incorporated. One of our favorite stocks. Symbol SMCI listed here on the NASDAQ. Maybe not for long. Who knows? But stock closed at 36.45, down a point and a half, almost 4% on the day. Had a big drop right after market close, of course, because someone got the news quicker than we did, and we found out supposedly there are rumors circulating that SMCI taps Evercore to raise capital. People immediately said, oh, I thought they had cash on hand. I thought the financials were healthy. What do they need to raise capital for? First of all, you have to remember that that's laughable in general. First of all, that's laughable because we know you have to spend money to make money. And even if you look at quote unquote more financially healthy stocks that are in better positions than SMCI, they still have debt and take out loans. And I mean, this is the way the system works. But also, more importantly, just like people, I took a quick look on stock twits real quick to see what, just some of the average people were saying. And obviously, some people still saying, oh, this is bad news, stocks going to zero. Other people remaining bullish and, just mentioning that, hey, listen, they have big orders coming in, so they have to obviously take on more debt to fulfill the orders. And as we said, you have to spend money now, take on more debt now to make money down the road. So in my opinion, I personally do not view this as a huge negative. And as soon as I heard the news too, I tweeted on X, or are they called tweets anymore? Or are they X's on X? I have no idea. But anyway, I posted on X, again, I'm at stocks by numbers, since apparently all of it doesn't fit. But I said, quote, rumors of SMCI tapping Evercore to raise some capital. In my opinion, this is not an issue at all. People concerned about debt, but just remember how much they blew Dell when SMCI started having trouble. Go look at the debt for Dell. I'll wait here. That was my exact post verbatim roughly 1 hour ago when I heard about this news. So initially, you can see we immediately spiked down to below this trend line here of about 33 and a third. Then it spiked back up to about 35 and a half. And you can see the tightening into the triangle, and now it's breaking downward. So we may potentially pull back to the low 30s, or I remember I was originally looking potentially for a pullback to like 28 or something. So we'll recheck some technicals real quick. But in my opinion, overall, I don't think this is an issue. However, I know that in roughly 2 hours, it's about 6 o'clock right now as of recording this video, 6 p.m. East. And I believe in about 2 hours, I think at 8 p.m. Eastern, that's when they're going to release potentially some names added and removed to the NASDAQ. So I know a lot of people are speculating SMCI may get removed. Other people are looking at other growing names that have been doing well, like MicroStrategy, Palantir. They're speculating that those are going to be added to the NASDAQ. In my opinion, I mean, again, I understand that concern is raised. However, I will say, they recently granted them an extension, right, out till February. So if you really thought the situation was kind of crappy, wouldn't you just not grant them the extension so that they would fall out of compliance and then you could just delist them, right? Doesn't that make more sense as opposed to granting an extension out till February, but now mid-December, you're randomly going to cut them off the NASDAQ, like you just granted them an extension. So again, unfortunately, we know anything can happen, right? So as I'm sitting here saying personally, I don't think any of this is bad news. I mean, we could potentially find out in 2 hours they got removed off the NASDAQ, right? And the stock will go from 34 back down to like 24 or $20. Who knows? Who knows? But again, I will remind you, for all the naysayers and the haters out there, I understand that when there's blood in the water, you want to go wild, you want to short, you want to buy puts, you just want to ride the wave down. I can completely appreciate that mentality. But also at the same time, I remind all of you that we supposedly had this same exact situation happen in 2018. The company continued to grow. They got delisted off the NASDAQ. They continued to grow. Then they got back on the NASDAQ, continued to grow, and now we're running into an issue as well. So that's why I'm saying, even hypothetically, if they're slated to do the type of business that they're forecasting, even if they get delisted now and the stock drops back to half this at $17, and then it doesn't do much for whatever, 6 months, 9 months, I will still say at the end of the day, unless we find out that almost everyone else is cutting ties with SMCI and we see that the forecasted growth in revenue and demand is never going to come to fruition now, until we hear a situation like that, in my opinion, as crazy as it sounds, I still like it. But again, that is just me. That is just me. But let's look at some of these trend lines here. Let's look at these technicals. Yeah, so when it had the next jump up here, I think I was expecting maybe a pullback like back down here maybe to like 33, 32, and you can see it kept going up to almost 50. It hit that 48 fib, and then it's been slowly coming back down, and now, of course, after hours, the stock here, 33.93, and you can see it's right at this trend line here, where we last paused before the break. But remember, again, this was because of the NASDAQ delisting, right? And we beat them up, and then we found out that they submitted the plan. That helped pump it up. Then they got the extension. That helped give it even more life, right? So that's why, again, in my opinion, I said, you know, $45, $50 a share really should be a layup for this company. And that's why we kind of immediately saw that surge back to kind of mid where we were back here. But in my opinion, again, you know, a 5-6% drop on the news, I mean, I guess I get it. But again, also at the same time, really not a big deal in my opinion. But technically now below the 20-day moving average here. And this trend line, if we immediately drop down again, 33.45 potentially. 31.78. So maybe like right here, 30.60. Kind of see how it's like the top of that candle, kind of, right? Where this candle stopped and that candle started. You can pull back maybe right there, maybe about like 30.5. But of course, as we know on the technical side, if we break the moving average and start to close and drop below these trend lines and these fib levels, we're going to, you know, remain bearish. So that's why I'd say, you know, right now, worst case, if we want to keep beating it up, maybe you can bring it back down here to about 27.60. But I still think, in my opinion, it's on sale. I do have to keep saying that. I do have to keep saying that. So, of course, again, if we do happen to get news that it gets delisted, I'm sure that, you know, they might smack it up big. But in general, if you look at the value of the business, I still think that regardless of how low it goes and how volatile it remains over the next several months or even throughout the next 12 months, I still say that over time, it is going to be a massive winner. Again, I told you I found it somewhere in here, and I spoke in previous videos about like this 4 or 5 year consolidated range here, and then all of a sudden, kaboom! And again, this was 2017, 2018 when they had their issues last time, right? They got delisted off the NASDAQ, nobody likes them, and then up we go. And then here in 2020 sometime, that's when they got re-added to the NASDAQ, and up we go, up and up and up and up. And then the word got out, and up, we beefed up our forecast, we got listed on the S&P, and up and up and up. So this is why I say, in my opinion, I do still like it. As crazy as some people might say that is, I do still like it. The short float on SMCI is 17.8% currently. And you can see even here, we pulled back right to the moving average here almost as well before the after hours drop. You can see it looked like it was just going to meet up with that moving average, maybe like the low 35s, you know, come down, test, and then maybe bounce up again. And, you know, now we have this news, oh, you know, they're looking to take on more debt or take out a loan or whatever the heck. But again, I mentioned Dell. I'll get to it in a second. But RSI on the daily here, middle of the road at 50. And you can see here also that the stock sitting just below the 50-day moving average technically is bearish. We're right here almost touching the mid-Bollinger Band. But we have the curl coming up here after this big drop and then this big rebound. So we have like our M&M curl here, and this is going to come back up. So hopefully, that's why I'm saying, as this comes up, hopefully the quote bottom of the bottom we may see will be like very low 30s or very high 20s, hopefully. But the MACD crossed to the upside here when we got the news of the plan submitting and the extension granted. And you can see that we curled. After this drop, we're probably right at it. So we have to see now if the MACD crosses to the downside and continues that sell-off, or if we pull back to kind of maybe scare out short-term traders and then we bounce instead of crossing to the downside. You understand? So we're going to have to take that basically day by day, keep an eye on some of those technicals. RSI didn't even run up to 50 on the weekly, now pulled back to 43.6. 200-day moving average coming up a touch below 24. I mean, again, if the MACD crosses to the downside on the daily, you know, we don't know how much bearish momentum this thing could really gain, especially since people, I feel like, are still trying to kind of push the quote-unquote fraudulent story. So anytime it has a run-up, people pile in and short the stock and jump on puts and just wait for the pullback and the drop the next day or the next day. So we'll have to see. But on the weekly time frame, again, after this run-up, I know we had the drop today after hours, but we were just about to cross to the upside on the weekly, which is why I'm saying on the daily, we might cool off for a day or two, but on the longer time frame, we might be ready to cross and gain more momentum, which is why I was saying last time that we could very well run back up to this 50-day moving average of 60 plus here, and we can get to 65, 66. So we'll see how the market reacts Monday from this news, but again, you know, tapping Evercore and we to raise capital, and we heard news of them cutting ties with you know, like older debtors and now signing up with newer lenders, because we know that it's based on the financials of the business, right? So now if you can go back to these institutions and say, look at the demand we got, look at how much the revenue increased, right? So we need like a newer loan with a larger you know, payment deadline, and we need a better rate, and you know, oh, Trump just won, right? You know, rates are going to come down, help us out. So who knows what's going on behind the scenes? But I just laugh when people try to say, oh, this is bad for them, I thought they had cash, blah, blah, blah. We checked the financials real quick. As of last quarter, debt is now outweighing cash. Cash sitting a touch below 1.7 billion. Obviously, they need more than that. But again, the debt's sitting here at 2 billion, right? And people try to tell me, well, not, I mean, they didn't tell me, but again, I was reading it online, people saying, oh, you know, this is bad, this is bad, this is bad. And I understand that you kind of want to keep doing that because you probably shorted the stock or owned puts. But just remember, as I tweeted out, nope, didn't mean to click on that. Just remember, as I tweeted out again, I said, people concerned about debt, but just remember how much they blew Dell when SMCI started having trouble. Go look at the debt on Dell. Let's look at the debt on Dell. Would you look at that? Dell is holding $5.33 billion in cash with almost $26 billion in debt. Also, short-term liabilities are outweighing short-term assets by roughly 50%, right? So they're probably going to run into short-term financial issues before SMCI would run into their longer-term financial issues, in my opinion, right? But just remember, the whole time SMCI started taking on crap, everyone was talking about Dell. But when we crunched the numbers and I pointed out how much debt they have, and also the fact that, you know, the company's sitting here with a negative book value per share, this is the company that was being blown as SMCI was supposedly being blown away, right? Which is why I said Dell needs SMCI to fail. SMCI seemed like a phenomenal growing winner, and my price target still stands at over $200 a share until I hear otherwise. And it just makes me laugh that all you heard about was how Dell could benefit. Yet, they're potentially in a worse spot than SMCI. SMCI positive equity, right? As of last quarter, $8.70 a share. Short-term assets heavily outweighing short-term liabilities. Again, the difference between long-term liabilities and assets, about $1.2 billion. I mean, right now they have more than that on cash. We look at the growth forecasted. Nope. We look at the growth forecasted. Look, high fives, up to 6.5, up to 7 billion. We look at the revenue coming in, 3.5, 5, 7, 15, 24, 29 billion, over 30 billion. I mean, look at what is potentially on the horizon. That's why I'm saying again, with this much potential, with them having business dealings with major powerhouses like Nvidia, with them getting the extension out till February to stay on the NASDAQ, I just don't see how anyone would benefit from removing this company from the NASDAQ. But again, I'll say it again, unless I hear significantly heavily weighted negative news coming out on SMCI, then my personal price target stands, and even if it gets delisted off the NASDAQ, but they're able to do this, in the long run, in my opinion, it's not going to matter. And people are going to forget about this, probably just like they did back in 2018. And I'm sure if you talk to anyone who was watching it back here, they probably would have said, you know what, I had a feeling it wasn't going to be an issue. The company still looked good. The NASDAQ listing didn't matter. I wish I piled in over here, and bang, a couple of years later, I'd be retired. I'd be a millionaire, right? So that's why I'm saying, unless the story changes, then in my opinion, you have to kind of have that conviction sometimes and, stick to your guns, so to speak, and maintain your analysis. But again, this is just my opinion. Every time I make an SMCI video and I say I still like it, I always have people saying, well, there's an issue with this, there's an issue with that. I think it goes back down to 20. So again, this is just my opinion, and we're all entitled to our own opinions. And obviously, one of us will be right and one of us will be wrong. The pivot points real quick, I'll let you go. Because again, I might jump on in about 2 hours if we do hear news. And again, people are looking for Palantir MicroStrategy to be added to the NASDAQ. People speculating SMCI may be removed from the NASDAQ. So we'll see if we can jump on and do a video in about 2 hours. But pivot point here, 29.71. Again, that's why I initially said what? Maybe a pullback to here, maybe like, 30.50 or something, 30.60. And you can see that's less than a point above this pivot point, so we can easily come down to there and then maybe bounce it. Again, looks like you got to keep an eye on the short-term MACD, but remember the long-term MACD as well. We had a pivot point 40.45. Obviously, we broke below that. And this next pivot point is basically right where the 200-day moving average is, of slightly below $24 a share. So yes, dropping 33% from here will suck. But again, I'll say, if the whole story overall of the business does not change, then in my opinion, if I liked it at 20, if I liked it at 33, I'm going to like it again at 23 or wherever it might go. So we'll take it day by day, but technically that news came out. Stock right now down to 33 1/3 roughly after hours, down 3 points, almost 8.5%. And you can see, look at that pullback, almost right to that line here. Look at that. Initially came basically right down to my trend line and then bounced, and now we're dropping even further on no news. But the stock right now, again, 33 1/4. So, all right, dropping even more. So people may be speculating now with this news that the company, again, they could be looking at it as it's not in as good shape as everyone thought it was. So now on this news, with the potential NASDAQ moves coming, let's jump on and let's short the stock. So again, the traders might work out. They might work out a profit here in this one quick if they short it at 34, 33. Even if the stock goes down to 30 or 28, you make a quick 10, 15%. But I just want to see and make sure. No one's posting anything, right? There was no news that hit. But again, we know as the news actually hits, we always find out like 20 minutes afterwards. But yeah, right now technically we're below that mark. So next trend line down would be roughly 27.5. So Obviously, a bunch of levels for you guys to watch. Stock right now dropping to 33.03. This is the low of the low, I believe. Initial drop down to 33.10. So this is now technically the lowest it's been. So again, the word might have gotten out. People might have jumped on the short side of the fence. But in my opinion, until we hear big negative news otherwise, then I have to say that my personal analysis still stands. And as crazy as it might be, I still maintain a $200+ long-term personal price target on SMCI. And see how it just flash broke that support trend line and it instantly bounced right back to it to try to retest. Now we can see a little rejection here, but that's why now we might come up and bounce around and then try to meet back up with the 20-day moving average. Because again, remember, for everyone who doesn't like it and will short it on a pop, there's someone out there who will maybe see it the way I'm personally looking at it, and they'll view this as an opportunity. So they'll scoop up some shares down in the low 30s, and try to ride it back up to 40, 45. So I'm getting a phone call. So that's pretty much it. I'll end it there. Once again, Stocks by the Numbers. I want to thank you for stopping by. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, please drop it down in the comments section. Please try to ignore that. And obviously subscribe to the channel, right? That is our handshake agreement. That is how... Really? 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 Okay, great. And what was I saying? Yeah, if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, drop it down in the comments section. And of course, subscribe to the channel. That's our handshake agreement. That is how you help me help you. But more importantly, moving forward, like I always say, I understand that markets are rocky, they're volatile, and they are very uncertain. So I want to wish all of you success. I hope everyone makes a couple of dollars. Thank you for your time. Have a great weekend.